Well, hello, dear classmates. These are my recommendations for the clubs that you would want to acquire. The first is the putter, and I would recommend the blade putter, which is in the illustration on the left. It has an alignment guide, the black stripe, uh, it helps you to align how to hit the ball, and then it has a groove here in the middle that allows you to pick up the ball. If it's on the ground and you just want to pick it up, slide the club into the ball and pick it up. You can avoid for now the fancier putters like the Fangs and the two ball putter. You will also need wedges. I would recommend a pitching wedge, 42 degrees of loft, a gap wedge, also known as approach wedge, 48 degrees of loft. There's the sand wedge with 54 degrees of loft, and the lob wedge, 60 degrees of loft. I think we can leave the lob wedge out for now because it's too difficult to hit. Sometimes it has a tendency to get stuck in the mud or stuck in the grass without hitting the ball. Or sometimes you hit under the ball as the ball sits tall in the grass and then you don't hit the ball at all. So it's difficult to use for beginners. Let's leave out the lob wedge for now. The reason for the various golf wedges is that you hit different distances and trajectories with the golf ball. The lob wedge is supposed to hit very high in the air, for example, over a sand bunker to reach the green and then stop beside the flag or the pin. And then the sand wedge in green jumps over the same bunker or the same water hazard, and then it lands on the green and can roll forward. The same with the gap wedge. It has a lower flight and then it travels a longer distance. The pitching wedge has the lowest of all flight paths, and then it travels a longer distance than the other wedges. If you want to go a farther distance, you'd need a 9, 8, 7 iron. These are the irons. Will I recommend to get 7, 8, 9 iron. For the 6, 5, 4, 3, to replace those with fairway woods. So what you would need would be, never mind the lob wedge for the time being, use a sand wedge, 54 degrees of loft. There's an approach wedge, also known as gap wedge, 48 degrees of loft. There's the pitching wedge, 42, 9 iron, 37 degrees, 8 iron, 32 degrees, and a 7 iron, 28 degrees. When it comes to the 6 wood, you can either have a 6 wood and a 4 wood or a 5 and a 6 wood. Okay, because it is really not useful to have 6, 5, 4, 3 woods all in the bag because they're so close together in terms of angle anyway. So either you get a 6 and a 4 or a 5 and a 3. And then later on, we will use driver. And the driver tends to have 11 degrees of loft. Then the putter is 0. It's a flat stick. Now, the reason for the different lofts of the club is that they are intended to go different distances. The irons do the job from 20 to 110. And then the woods are supposed to make the ball travel 120 to 180 degrees for a beginner golfer. And then the driver on a half swing can go 150, but it can also be made to go up to 250 once you're stronger and you have more flexibility as well as rhythm. This is the 6 wood, which has a loft of 24 degrees. The angle of the club face is 24. Use that instead of a 6 iron because this travels through the grass better and it won't so easily get stuck in the ground, resulting in a flubbed ball strike. If you hit the ground before the club, before the ball itself, then you tend to flub the strike, flub the club. Now this is a 5 iron on the right. Sorry, 5 instead of a 5 iron, use a 5 wood with a loft of 21. Instead of a 4 iron, use a 4 wood with a loft of 18 degrees. And instead of 3 iron, use a 3 wood which would have a loft of 15 degrees. The 5 wood, oddly enough, travels the farthest of all. And then In this illustration, it travels at a lower flight than the 7 wood, and it ends up farther. The 3 wood is meant to just scoot the ball around on the ground. For example, you want to avoid overhanging tree branches, then you would need to use the 3 wood to strike the ball, make it go back to the fairway, and roll, roll, roll far enough to maybe even reach the green. A driver would have a loft of 11 degrees. 11 degrees is in this case, the angle between the orange line and the blue line. And you're supposed to anyway hit the driver on an upswing. So you're supposed to scoot the driver along the ground, not hit the ground, but then hit the ball, which is already up on a tee. And depending on the power of your driver strike, then it will either go 160, 200, 250, or 300 for the professionals. I think this is yards, not meters. The driver is a longer club, more difficult to swing, requires different muscles. So you have to develop first the right muscles, flexibility, and rhythm. And we do that first with the clubs, putter up to 7 iron. Okay. Now the reason for the lofts is that you have okay, you have each club has a different angle when it hits the golf ball. There's the loft, which is the angle between the club face and the club shaft. Um, so here's the irons with different lofts, and they do have different jobs to fulfill, different distances that they're supposed to make the ball travel. I already so these are the different distances and the flight paths taken by the wedges, and overall for irons and woods, different distances and flight paths. Okay. So that becomes important because you will be striking the ball with different force depending on how far back the club goes. So if you imagine that a golfer is standing straight and addressing the ball, and then imagine that over here is 9 o'clock, over there is 12 o'clock, and imagine that if you bring back the club to the 8 o'clock position, hit the ball, and then end up in the 8 o'clock position as well, it would send the 7 iron about 30 meters. If you if you bring back the club to a 9 o'clock position, and then swing, hit the ball, and then stop at the also at the roughly 9 o'clock position, actually 3 o'clock position, then you would send the ball 36 meters. If you hit if you bring up the club to a 10 a.m. position, and then swing, hit the ball, and follow through up to same level position, you'd send the ball 42 meters. If you start at 11 a.m., higher than this 10 a.m., then it would send the ball 50 meters. If you're like this fellow here on the right with a 12 noon golf club at 12 noon, then you can send the ball 62 meters. If you bring up the ball to higher than 12 noon, like 1 a.m., and then use a hip swing, then you can send the ball 74 meters. So with the 7 iron, you can either use a set, for example, a 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. swing. You go to the driving range, hit 10 balls from the same spot, and then check the distance traveled. Ideally, the golf balls that were struck in the same way should end up clustered together. If you hit them with a club at 10 a.m., strike the ball, and then the follow through is also at the same height, around roughly same height as the 10 a.m. Stroke, then you can send the ball to 42-meter mark. If you lift the club to the 11 o'clock position and then strike the ball and follow through also in an 11 o'clock position, then you would send the balls to the 50-meter mark. So take notes and know your distances. It will be different for each person. So let's say that you're actually on the golf course already. You estimate the distance remaining to the flag or the pin. If the flag is 42 meters away, you know that you can select your 7 iron and use a 10 a.m. swing. If it's 50 meters away, you can use a 7 iron with an 11 a.m. swing. What if it's 42 meters away but elevated, say several meters higher than the fairway? Then you need to estimate it as 50-meter distance in effect and use a 7 iron on an 11 a.m. swing. So palong 50 meters. Okay, good. All right, so that's a lesson for today. Cheers. Mm, and stop recording. Okay.